Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly powerful, almost diagnostic collection of metaphorical aphorisms by Oluyemi Oladevid. The piece is titled Too Occupied to Observe Winds. And let me tell you, it's short, it's sharp, and it has the absolute power to completely change how you view your own daily obstacles. Seriously, whether you're trying to build a career, foster better relationships, or honestly just find the motivation to tackle a tough morning, this is going to resonate with you. Okay, let's dive right into this. The freedom is never due for a willing captive. Just let that sit with you for a second. That hits hard, doesn't it? It perfectly hooks us in and establishes this piercing, poetic tone for everything we're about to explore today. I mean, think about how often we find ourselves trapped in unfulfilling situations, only to eventually realize that we're the ones holding the key. We're the ones refusing to walk out the door. But before we dissect the poetry itself, we really need to understand the visionary behind these words, Oluyemi Oladevid. She is a strategist, a writer, and a true visionary whose poetry directly reflects her broader life mission. When we read her work, we aren't just reading pretty phrases. We're getting a direct window into how she views human potential and societal progress. Her mission is crystal clear. She is proudly Nigerian with a profound love for people, and she is fiercely dedicated to global development and transformation. She's focused on generating real solutions, influencing strategy, and providing absolute clarity in a world that, let's face it, is pretty chaotic most of the time. Plus, she's driven by this deep faith, beautifully describing God as the wheel within my wheels. That phrase really encapsulates her worldview, this idea that there's a larger divine mechanism at play, and she's working in alignment with it. And it's exactly this background, her drive for strategic clarity, and her foundational faith that totally informs the incisive, diagnostic nature of her poetry. She looks at human behavior to find the root cause of our stalls and our failures. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we transition into part one, the trap of excuses. We're looking at those everyday excuses that are essentially just born out of laziness. She writes, the weather is always cold for a lazy hunter. Notice how she brilliantly connects the external environment, the cold weather, to internal hesitation. Because think about it, the weather is just weather. It's entirely neutral. It rains, it snows, the wind blows. It simply does what it does without any malice whatsoever. But to the lazy hunter, it becomes an insurmountable obstacle, a highly convenient reason not to step outside and do the hard work of tracking and hunting. And look, we've all been there, right? Staring out the window, desperately searching for any reason to just stay in our comfort zone. People complain that the harvest is never ripe, but the reality is we're just looking at a sleepy farmer. They claim the field is always slippery, but the truth is, it's just a lazy runner. Even complaining that the food is always hot is really just a cover for a lazy belly. The juxtaposition she uses here is striking. We are so incredibly quick to blame the harvest, the field, or the food. And let's be totally honest, we've probably all used the food is too hot excuse at some point to delay eating something we didn't want, or to put off getting back to work. She's telling us the uncomfortable truth here. The real flaw is inside. The external world is merely a scapegoat for our own internal lethargy. And then she hits us with this profound line. The throne is always small for a lazy heir. Take a moment to really reflect on this specific metaphor. Have you ever acted like the lazy heir in your own life? Like when you're presented with a grand opportunity, maybe a massive promotion, a challenging new relationship, or a huge creative project. Have you ever looked at that throne and complained that it just wasn't the right fit? When in reality, you just didn't want to do the heavy lifting? The immense responsibility required to actually sit on that throne and rule? It is always easier to criticize the opportunity than to rise to its level. Moving right along to part two, flaws of the heart. And this brilliantly illustrates how she moves beyond mere physical laziness or procrastination. She goes way deeper to diagnose much more destructive, deep-seated character flaws. The prodigal heart, the boastful buyer, the greedy dog, and the stony heart. She is systematically cataloging the different ways our corrupted internal states absolutely ruin our interaction with the external world around us. Let's follow her logic through these examples. The land is never green for a prodigal heart. The good is always worthless for a boastful buyer. The bone is never sufficient for a greedy dog. The crucial point she's making is this. The world isn't inherently lacking. The land isn't actually barren, the goods aren't actually worthless, and the bone isn't actually too small. It's the individual's inherently flawed perspective that makes it seem so. A greedy dog will never, ever be satisfied no matter how massive the bone is. It perfectly mirrors the modern trap of endless consumerism, doesn't it? We keep buying, keep scrolling, keep consuming, and yet nothing is ever sufficient. The problem is the greed, not the bone. Which leads us to this incredibly heavy realization. The warning is never loud. For a stony heart. Think about the massive weight of that statement for a second. Her point is that internal stubbornness, a stony heart, actively blinds and deafens us to the realities and the warnings all around us. If you refuse to listen, if your heart is permanently hardened to advice, to critique, or to the changing winds, no alarm bell is ever going to be loud enough to save you from impending disaster. So, looking at your own life right now, I have to ask you, are you too occupied to observe the winds? Are you so busy crafting complex excuses, harboring a stony heart, or acting like the lazy air that you're missing the vital signs, the warnings, and the incredible opportunities all around you? Pulling directly from the title of her piece, this is a brilliant pivot from a critique of general human nature into a moment of deeply personal introspection for every single one of us.
Let's move to part 3 and see how this builds into her call to readiness.
Remember, Oluyomi David is a strategist. She doesn't just leave us with a harsh diagnosis. To find clarity and generate real solutions, she outlines a clear, proactive path forward for us. First, we have to completely discard our external excuses. Second, we have to address those internal character flaws head-on, softening the stony heart. Third, we adopt the diligent mindset of the good ant. And fourth, we execute a noble deed. Connect these steps directly back to the mission we discussed at the very beginning of this explainer. Her dedication to global transformation and generating actual solutions is fully realized right here. She successfully transitions us from identifying the root problem to generating an actionable, truly empowering path forward. Notice the dramatic shift in tone as she concludes the poem. She writes, "The time is always now for a good ant." Gone are the pessimistic, stalling words like never or always cold or slippery. Instead, she's telling us that for the diligent, prepared individual, represented beautifully here by the tirelessly working good ant, the timing is absolutely perfect. The ant doesn't wait around for a formal invitation to build its colony or gather its food. The time isn't tomorrow. The time is now. And she follows that up with, the season is always ripe for a noble deed. This right here is her ultimate empowering takeaway. Readiness and a good heart completely conquer the distracting winds we are so often preoccupied by. A noble deed doesn't require pristine, ideal conditions, It just requires action. In the context of her mission to generate solutions for global development, a noble deed is anything that pushes progress forward, no matter how small it might seem. Helping a neighbor, launching a tough project, forgiving a long-held grudge. You do not have to wait for the perfect season, the perfect weather, or the perfect harvest, if your intention is truly noble and your heart is fully prepared to do the work. Which leaves us with one final, vital question to close out our explainer today. Looking at your own goals, your own life, will you wait for the perfect weather, or will you act now? I truly hope Oluyomi David's profound words have inspired you to stop making excuses, clear out those internal roadblocks, and start performing your own noble deeds today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep observing those winds, and I'll catch you next time.